Emerging markets in and around Central and Eastern Europe are increasingly offering a fresh direction for retail investors, hoping to cash in as these growing economies cater to a new class of consumer. Countries such as Russia and Turkey are typical examples.
Turkey at the moment is on the top 1 or 2 countries for all major international investors to expand into. And over the last 12 months, we've seen the Inditex group of Zara go in, Debenhams have opened, there are Mango, H&M, Harvey Nichols opened 2 weeks ago.
A large proportion of the Russian population have their rents, their accommodation sort of costs relatively low. They were able to buy their residential accommodation at relatively low prices. So in comparison to a Western Europe where you might see 40% of their total expenditure going on housing, in Russia the average is about 20%. So you've got a large disposable income already relative to their total income.
Jones Lang LaSalle classifies Istanbul and Moscow in the development stage of shopping centre yields, at between 7 and 11% prime yields.
In Turkey there's the potential for retail space growth is significant. There is a per capita provision of shopping centre space which is half of countries like Poland and Sweden. It's one of the lowest in Europe per capita. So the per capita growth can grow significantly. There is a huge pipeline already identified in Turkey, but that is focusing on Istanbul and many of the provincial cities as well. So even with the pipeline that we foresee, the stock will be one of the largest in Europe, but the per capita provision will remain going from the lowest position to an average position in Europe.
But with opportunity comes risk.
I see the biggest risk being supply of stock. Sometimes the planning regimes are lax and you do not know what's going to pop up next door. You see a lot of examples of schemes being built across the roads, which leads to destruction of capital. So anything which can undermine the value of your shopping centre, which is its supply, its sales basically.
The principal risk that we've identified is the unsophisticated nature of the vendor market. Many shopping centres, particularly in Turkey, have been built by consortiums of local businesses because construction finance wasn't available. So you can find quite a number of owners of one shopping centre. Therefore, actually being able to negotiate with all of them or find the right person to negotiate with to get the 100% can be difficult.
When you're dealing with a market like Russia, the lack of transparency is not necessarily because that there isn't a willingness to share data, it's that the data doesn't exist in the first place. Again, a perspective is perhaps that the retail investment market in Germany will exceed 8 billion euros this year. In Russia it will be 1 billion and it will be done between sort of 5 or 6 deals. It's difficult to establish transparency in such a small market. I have no doubt at all that as the market evolves and we have more transactions, that it has a similar market style to Central Europe, which has become one of the most transparent markets we have in Europe, and certainly more so than some of the established EU countries.
One way of managing risk in emerging markets is to establish local partnerships.
The courting of partners is key. Understanding those partners and understanding the drivers behind those partners is very key. For Jones Lang LaSalle, we have got some local partners and they are best-in-class advisors. So for us, we've been able to partner up with local businesses who feel we can tailor to the demands of our investors. So partnerships for the investor and partnership for the local advisors are key.
I think it depends on the type of investor. I don't think there's a rule of thumb for any specific investor. For developers, I think it would be very difficult for a new market international developer coming into Russia or a Turkey or Romania to do it completely alone. I think that there are, in markets where relationships with local authorities are very critical, that you're not reliant, you can't be reliant solely on international retailers. You have to engage the domestic retailers because simply the shopping centres won't be full if you don't. That requires local partners. I think for investors it depends on their own strategy. If you've got an investor that has a desire to create and extend centres, then having a development partner for those same reasons would be important.
Risk aside, the long-term potential for investors in emerging markets makes them far too attractive to ignore.
having worked in the Central European markets and then the emerging markets, the Balkans and now Russia, I think there are patterns that you can see, and I think the first rule is for investors is never assume anything, that you cannot escape. Due diligence is not optional, it's a necessity. Second rule is probably that you mustn't let that compromise your ability to move swiftly.